Now, what we're looking at this here, if there are any left in the second stack, it doesn't look like it. So, what we know is that a straight line, the sum of the two angles is going to be what? Straight angle. What's the measure of a straight angle? 180, yes? So what that's telling us is that these two angles added together are going to equal 180 degrees. Whatever those two angles are, their measure should add together to be 180. It's going to be 180 degrees. Now, did they tell us what either one of those angles was? Well, they didn't tell us an exact number for either angle. You can do it below. But I do know that one of these angles is being signified by 10x minus 5. Because that's what they're telling us that angle is. And if I take that and add it to 4x plus 3, because again, those two angles, they're signified by equations, but they will add together to be 180 degrees. Because of our angle sum postulate that we had yesterday that said the bigger angle is equal to the sum of the little two. Or it could be 3 or it could be 4, the ones that make it up. They add together to give me the whole. So 10x minus 5 and 4x plus 3, if we add those two angles together, we will get the whole angle of 180. Now, the reason we're doing this and setting it up this way is because if I can find out what the value of x is that makes this true, I can actually find out what the degree values is for each angle. Well, the first thing we can do is combine like terms. Well, what are our like terms? 10x and 4x. Now, because they're on the same side of the equal sign, we can go on and just add them together, which would be 14x. And our other like terms are negative 5 and 3, and we can add those together. Mm-hmm. We can add 2 to both sides, yes, which will tell us that 14x is equal to 182. Yeah, I flipped the sides of where x is. Yeah, and that's fine. Because again, equality, 182 is still going to equal to 14x, and 14x is equal to 182. And then what can we do? Yes. So the value of x is 13. Now, to find out what the actual angles are, we need to plug it back in. I'm just going to pick the 10x minus 5. So we can say 10 times 13 minus 5. Well, 10 times 13 is 130 minus 5 is 125 degrees. So the measure of angle KLN is 125 degrees. Angle. Now we can do the same thing with 4x plus 3. So 4 times 13 plus 3. Well, 4 times 13 is going to be 52 plus 3 is degrees. So the measure of angle, let's see here, NLM would be 55 degrees. Any questions on this here? Now, what is 125 plus 55? What does that give us? 180, yes? Well, what did we say the two angles added up to be? 180. So it kind of confirms what we were saying, yes? Because as long as those two angles do add up what the total is supposed to be, then we got the right answer. So it kind of gives us a way to check the overall answer so that we do know that we have it correct. Oh, almost. I'm going to put this aside, otherwise I'm going to sit there and mess with it all the time. Well, any other questions on this here before we move on? We good with this here? Let's look at this one here. Given that EFG is a right angle, EFG, the whole angle is a right angle, so what is the degree measure of the whole angle? 90. The whole thing is 90. So we can say 90 is equal to what? But those two added together will give us 90. Because that's what the angle sum postulate tells us. Well, we can combine like terms, which would be 2x and x, which would give us 3x. 2 and 1, which would give us plus. Okay. Yes. $90 minus 3 would be 87. And then what would we do? Divide both sides by 3. And we get x is equal to? I believe it should be 29. Do you all agree with that? Okay. Well, we wanted to know the angle measure, so we have to plug them back in, yes? Well,
are you ever going to give us problems where, like, it doesn't, it's like not a whole number, it's a decimal fraction?
we could, yeah. Well, it would be the exact same thing. We just have a decimal instead of a whole number. It wouldn't change the overall process. It just changed what the number looks like at the end, because our next step would be just plugging it back in here and here. So our first one, x plus 1, that would be 29 plus, which is? So the measure of angle HFG is 30. If we do it for this one here, it'd be 2 times 29 plus 2. 58 plus 2 is, so the measure of angle EFH is, huh? Because this here is the what? Measure of angle EFH. So we're talking about the measure of the angle. And we can put the little degree markers on there also. Any questions on this here? Are we ready for the next part? Okay. You're all good? Okay. Let's look at the next problem. Now the next problem is this here. Now let's see what it says. QS bisects angle PQR. Well, we've talked about bisect before, yes?
Yes.
Because we talked about line segment bisectors the other day. And what had happened when we had a line segment bisector, a section bisector? It did what? It cut it in half, yes? And so the two lines were congruent to each other. We can solve from there. So if we're talking about this ray bisecting the angle, it's cutting the angle in half. Well, if PQS is 24, what's the measure of SQR? 24 degrees, because it cuts it in half. And those two angles are going to be equal to each other, just like with the line segments. So that means that the measure of angle PQR, the whole thing, would be what? That would be 24 and 24, which would be 48. Because we almost just double that angle, because they're both going to be the same, so we can add those two together. Any other questions on this here? That's it. Yes, it asked us to find the measure of PQR. Well, PQS is 24, SQP is 24 because of the angle bisector, and we add those two together to get the whole angle. Okay. Well, the next one tells us that VB is an angle bisector. VB bisects angle AVC. And the measure of AVC, the whole thing is, find the measure of VB and measure of BVC. Right, because since it bisects it, Because we can take 158 and divide it by 2 because it cuts it in half, and it is half of 158 is 79 degrees. So the measure of angle AVB is 79. The measure of angle BVC is, and that's it. You're good. I will tell you guys this now. I would, especially on tests or when I hand out stuff, read the directions. Because it might happen in chapter 2 when I pass out the handout. It says in the directions underline the hypothesis and circle the conclusion. On the test, it might say circle the hypothesis and underline the conclusion. Flipped them. I might do that, and I've had people in the past lose points because they did it the other way around. So, any questions on this here? All right, let's look at the next problem. We're going to look at this here because I will add this in. So, y'all can write the angle down. Yep, so draw this in. That's fine. Just because it's not perfect, that is perfectly fine. Because I do want to cover this type, and I'm going to be adding these to the note sheet. So I would at least draw the angle and the two measures, 8x plus 35 and 11x plus 23. You can, yes. Go on and run through that for me real quick. That's fine, I'll take it here in a little bit. I call present, we're here. Okay, so it tells us that BD is a bisector, yes? It cut the angle in half. And that's the last few that we did, right? Because the first one, well, we knew one was 24, the other's going to be 24. So they combined to give us 48. The one after that, we said the whole angle was 158. Well, it cuts it in half. We found one was 79, and the other is going to be 79 also, yes? So it's telling us here that these two angles, this one here and this one here, are going to be the same because it cuts it in half, yes? And if I want to find the angles, well, all I need to find is the value of x, yes? Well, they give us the same value, yes? So really, I can say 8x plus 35 is equal to what? Because these two are going to be the exact, so I can set them equal to each other. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes? It's a degree. It's telling us it's that 11x plus 23 degrees. That's the measure of the angle. Since it's parentheses around it, the whole thing is degrees. Now, what can we do first? Yes, minus 23. We can subtract 23 from both sides. 23 minus 23 would be 0, so I'm left with 11x on this side. Over here, we're going to have 8x plus 12. Mhm. Then what can we do next? Almost. I want to get the x's together. Subtract 8x. Because we could divide both sides by 11, but we would have to divide the 11x, the 12, and the 8. We'd have to do 3 things. So it's a little bit easier if we subtract the 8x first. Equals. Yes. Well, now we divide. So x is equal to 4. Any questions on how we found the value of x? Now we need to do what? Plug it back in. So we can pick either one. I'll pick the 8x plus 35. So we can say 8 times 4 plus 35. Well, 8 times 4 is? Plus 35 is? 67. Yep. So the measure of angle ABD is 67. So the measure of angle DBC is 67 degrees also. Because we didn't have to plug it in because we knew that our ray bisected the angle in half. So it should be 67. And if we wanted to know the measure of angle ABC, the whole angle would be 67 and 67 added together, which would give us 134. And that's it. Questions on this here? Easier than what you thought that was going to be? Yeah. Have y'all started to notice a lot of this stuff is 1 or 2 steps geometry? And then the rest is algebra 1? And that's what a lot of this year is going to be, is we'll utilize the geometry steps to get this set up to solve, and then it's back to algebra 1. So this here is the assignment. Because 3 through 12, 21 through 26, 33, 34, 37, and 40. Now, 3 through 6, the first 4 problems, name the angle in 3 different ways. 7 and 8, I think it's name the angle in 3 different ways. So a lot of these here are naming the angles and a lot of that kind of stuff. So the reason it's a little bit more is because I know that y'all can get through it a little bit faster than some of the others. Yep, so 3 through 6 is name the angle in 3 ways. 7 and 8, name the 3 different angles in the diagram. So you just need to name 3 angles in the diagram. 9 through 12, they give you a protractor. They want you to find the measure of the angle. That's not too bad for those first 12. 13 and 14 I didn't include. 21 through 26, all of those are finding the measure of the angles. Because the first few, they give you the total. There's a few with equations. 33, 34, 37, and 40 are, again, they're giving you the measures, find the total, or find the individual angles. And that's really it. Yes.